Hello and welcome to our report from Parliament's November plenary session. This week, MEPs prepared for the Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen. They debated the Swedish Presidency's Stockholm Programme on justice and home affairs, and they talked to Commission President Barroso. But first, for some time now, MEPs have been considering a package of measures to regulate the telecoms sector. That process reached its climax this week here in Strasbourg.
The legislation being debated this week is the result of painstaking negotiations between the Parliament and the Council. The two institutions had to enter a process known as conciliation to try to find agreement on certain disputed elements of the legislation, which became known as the Telecoms package. For the Commission, the Telecoms package has been a signal of its commitment to open up markets, drive innovation and enhance consumer rights. Viviane is the Commissioner responsible for the Information Society.
Now, with the adoption of the reform package as it now stands, the Union will have a regulatory framework that is fit to meet the challenges of a rapidly developing digital economy based on fair prices for all to get telephone and internet connections, while preparing the ground for investments in high-speed networks delivering high-quality, innovative services. Now, these rules, these reforms will make the European Union a global leader in the regulation of electronic communications, not just by improving the mechanism to move towards a competitive single market, but also by putting the rights of the citizens at the heart of a regulatory policy.
Commissioner Reding also reassured MEPs who had feared it would be easier for internet service providers to block customers' access to the web. She said that internet users would be protected by law. MEPs were lobbied heavily by consumer rights groups to ensure an adequate level of protection for internet users. And MEP Gunnar Hökmark explained in an interview why the rights of internet users are ensured.
I think we have ensured that fully and totally, securing that no one will be cut off from the internet if it is not totally inconsistent with the European Convention on Human Rights about information and freedom, and also securing that each one has the right to be heard. I think we have done that quite well.
The legislation was approved by a majority of MEPs, meaning one of the biggest and most complicated packages of regulation to come before the Parliament in recent years will now become law.
The long-awaited International Copenhagen Climate Change Summit is now less than 2 weeks away. In preparation for the event, MEPs adopted a resolution on the EU position at ongoing negotiations that will culminate in the Danish capital in December.
They emphasised the need for cooperation at a global rather than continental level and prioritised this over the need for financial commitments. German MEP Karl-Heinz Florenz, who is a member of Parliament's Environment Committee, expressed his surprise over the focus on monetary figures in the global debate.
On financing, I'm astounded that there's a competition in the figures. What's important to me is that there is a bottom to the barrel in which our money is poured. Developing countries have to be involved, Commissioner, with appropriate figures and targets. I would urge that. Europe has been credible on this, and this credibility is something which gives us clout.
Die Seriosität auch der Kommission, das möchte ich noch mal ausdrücklich sagen, und des Rates, ist unser Gewicht, und an diesem Gewicht sollten wir weiterarbeiten.
Environment Commissioner Stavros Dimas said the conference afforded the world an historic opportunity. Responding to questions from the members in plenary, he focused specifically on how Europe could set an example by promoting green industry.
We need a global agreement, meaning all countries of the world to participate in an agreement, comprehensive agreement, all sectors of the economies to participate in the reductions, and of course science-based. In order to have such a global agreement, in order to persuade other countries to come forward, we have to keep pressing by our example. An example which has its moral importance, the moral leadership of Europe is important, but also an example by showing that green business is very important for our competitiveness.
Members pushed strongly for the two-week conference to result in binding agreements with CO2 reduction targets that meet the objective of limiting the global temperature increase to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Mr. Florenz also called on the Commission and Council to expand the EU's emission trading scheme, the ETS.
We have to sign up to a world carbon budget. That's being negotiated, but this needs to be looked at state and continental level. And once we've done that, the ETS needs to be further developed, which won't be easy. If this is just a European story, this will be too narrow, and that's why, Mr. Dimas and Council, I would encourage you to try and export all this as energetically as you can.
As European integration continues, the area of justice and home affairs has become ever more important, and cooperation has gradually developed. The Swedish EU Presidency has made it one of its main priorities to enhance cross-border cooperation by adopting a new strategic framework known as the Stockholm Programme.
In the European Parliament plenary session, Sweden's Minister for Justice, Beatrice took part in a debate on the programme.
Europe continues to face major challenges which we have to jointly resolve at EU level. The entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty gives us new opportunities to do that. The new multi-annual work programme, the Stockholm Programme, will therefore be based on these new opportunities provided by the Lisbon Treaty.
One of the key elements in the Stockholm Programme is the protection of the rights of European citizens.
The vision of the Stockholm Programme is one of a more secure and open Europe, where the rights of individuals are safeguarded. The needs of individual citizens and people have to be the starting point, more than has been the case in this area in the past. We are working on behalf of our citizens, and they have to feel that future EU cooperation is important to them.
Some European countries, in particular in the Mediterranean area, have experienced problems with immigration. People arrive at their shores in large numbers, and smaller countries find it difficult to handle this problem on their own. The Stockholm Programme is also about burden sharing and how to turn migration into something positive. Sweden's Minister for Migration, Tobias Billström, was also in Parliament and touched upon the need for migration.
The starting point for our work should be that well-managed migration is good for everyone, for the member states and for the European Union as a whole, and also for the countries of origin and for the migrants themselves.
German MEP Manfred Weber, Vice Chairman of the EPP Group, has worked with these issues for a long time in Parliament, and he welcomed the efforts made by the Swedish Presidency.
The EPP would have wanted more from the Stockholm Programme, more ambition, but we should be pleased that we are in a new procedure now and we can get down to some hard work.
At a meeting with the group here in Strasbourg, European Commission President José Manuel Barroso emphasised the EPP's dominant position in the EU since the European elections in June. The three main EU institutions, the Council of Ministers, the European Parliament and the Commission, are all led by EPP members, and the Commission will have 12 EPP commissioners out of 27. Its programme will be inspired by the principles and values for which the EPP has campaigned. Barroso also expressed his satisfaction at the choices for the new President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, and the High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Catherine Ashton. Spanish MEP and Secretary-General of the European People's Party, Antonio López Istúriz, also gave us his view on the choices made at last week's summit.
But I think that the good news is that we had appointments. We were not involved in many discussions about the post. We have already covered this post, and I think that for the citizen and for our voters in the EPP, that's what they were expecting about with us. They were expecting that after voting us, that we have the majority all around Europe, that we take seriously our responsibilities. The nominations have been already done, and now it's time for action.
Parliament's next session will take place at the same time as the Copenhagen Climate Conference, which many MEPs will be attending. It also marks the end of the Swedish Presidency. We'll be back with more news then. To keep up to date in the meantime, tune in to epptv.eu. Thanks for watching.